So, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and apologies because we have tried to do this how many times and I kept canceling, our circumstances kept changing. And so this has been a long time coming. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I'm very happy to be here, and I look forward to this very important discussion.
Yeah, it is very important because you and I want to talk about AI in the legal field, legal industry, as it relates to content marketing, social media marketing, and marketing in general, and the use of AI. So it's kind of a large topic, but I think we're going to take it down to a level. But first, I want to learn a little bit about you, if possible. I know you and I we've connected. This is the power of networking online. We've actually never met in person, but we've stayed connected through social media for, gosh, it's got to be well over 10 years, 10, 11 years.
More
You
than
were
that.
you were in the Midwest, I was in the Midwest, and now we're both in the South.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was living in Chicago where I spent a good 12 years of my life, and I was in a legal PR Chicago group and looking to connect with other Marquette alumni in the area. I mean, Marquette is located in Wisconsin, but it really is a Chicago school. And it's so I always found a great amount of Marquette alumni. And here in Dallas too, we have a lot of people in the good Marquette alumni base, and they get together and watch basketball games and things like that. So it's always fun to do that and just kind of keep the connections with those who I went to school with. I think that my experience at Marquette University really gave me a lot of advantages in the world of communications and all that. And I was a communications major there because I was pledging SIGEP while taking psych stats, as I was talking to you about. And I was a psych major, and I failed that twice, and then switched to the College of Communication. So what a good thing.
yeah.
And what did I learn from taking statistics twice is that you can make anything true by adjusting the sample size and standard deviation.
This is true. Big words, but yes, I believe that as well. So, tell me, so we know you graduated from Marquette. Tell me a little bit more about how you went from there to where you are now, which is a
Sure.
branding, communication, and business consultant,
Yes.
specifically for legal firms, correct? Or am I wrong on that?
Well, law
Financial and
firms
legal?
primarily because they're
Yeah.
my peeps, but
Right.
as well, other service industry professionals, and I even have clients who have health and weight loss companies, all sorts of different things,
Okay.
finance, you name it. So
Gotcha.
after graduating from college, and I had a deal with worked out with my family. I was not about to be the first cousin not to attend graduate school. There was a lot of pressure, and my options were psychology, law, medicine, something like that. Again, I told you I wanted to do psych. I wanted to go into child psychological therapy and talk therapy, things like that, and healing. Law was a backup. I had an uncle who was a judge and other cousins who were lawyers. So, and I remember talking to my dad about this. Part of the way through, I said, "Dad, I don't want to do this. I don't want to practice law, but I do like having it. It was important to have the education, and I wanted to do something creative and something in business. So, I knew that was my interest. I had been working in family law, actually, family law and criminal defense before law school. I was at the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office,
Okay.
where I started working for then Stephanie Rothstein, who was the misdemeanor charging captain. So I got to work as an intern at the District Attorney's Office, and then also worked for a family lawyer, Carrie Fritz Klaus, in Milwaukee. So I was already deep into law practice before I even got to law school, and so
Right.
that experience kind of tends to go into other things, and I stuck in family law. But I mean, I always wanted to know the business of it. And after law school, I actually had an interesting time. I left Chicago after graduation and went on the Vans Warp Tour for 2 years with friends I had in band and entertainment management. And I was going to
There you
be
go.
LA's coolest entertainment manager dude. And that was my whole plan. And I came back to reality and came back to the city a few years later and started out doing public relation marketing and all that for lawyers and law firms about the time when Facebook became available to all of us non-college students. It was LinkedIn already was there on the scene, and people were starting to do things basically lawyers were starting to start their own practices on their own and working out of their homes because DSL and other internet lines became available. And I realized that they needed websites, they needed LinkedIn, they needed Facebook, they needed help. And there was a gentleman who started doing a blog talk radio podcast in Boston. The LinkedIn Lawyer was his nickname. And I saw him doing
Some
that.
reason I think I remember him. He was pretty
David,
popular.
possibly someone, and he had a
Yeah,
huge following. And I started doing these podcasts in 2005 and doing Law Talk Radio. And at the time, it was so exciting because it was like radio was in the name, and no one knew what a
right.
podcast was or was internet radio. What's that? And I really enjoyed the celebrity in Cook and DuPage counties at the time of being the person who was a premier social media expert, and I was introduced as that. And it's interesting. One of my failures, critical of myself in life, is failing to maintain that expert standard. I got busy just in work, and you get what you need in life, and it's easy to rest on the things that you've already done. And now there's so much that's new and changing, and I
Mhm.
just want to help people adapt to things as they change and take all these technologies that are available to them. We just saw Elon Musk roll out robots who are dancing,
Did you
and
see
they're
that?
yeah, their dance moves are not that great yet, but they're getting better. So
Yep.
yeah, before you see robots debuting at Cotillion, they have some work to do.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, Elon's had a great week. It's not just the van that they sent out, the robots, but then also catching the I don't know if it was a rocket,
Oh, the
this
SpaceX
the
rocket, yeah,
SpaceX
came
rocket.
back to base. Boca Chica,
Unbelievable.
Texas is just a good 7 hours down the road for me. I need to get down there and watch a launch one of these days.
Yeah, 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 definitely. Well, since we're on a little pathway to AI or to, new technologies, let me ask you, because I have a list of questions, because even though we're
Yes.
all technical, guess what? I still
Pen and
I
paper,
still
but it's
use
how we
pen and
learn.
paper and spiral.
It's a learning style that comes
I
from that's a
know.
psychology thing. It's writing it down, you'll remember the notes. When I was in college, I used to picture my notes because I would draw boxes and arrows, and I'm a visual learner.
Yeah, me as well. But so for the first question, for law firms that may be a little, well, first of all, I think we should talk about how are you, if not giving away your secrets, but how are you utilizing AI in content creation and social media and
Mhm.
for attorneys? Because I would assume they have some questions for you if you're doing that. And how do you
Sure,
handle that? So maybe you can kind of give us a little overview of that
sure.
integration.
Um, I would call it 5 years ago, 4 years ago, ChatGPT was new, and,
Was it that
uh
long already?
it is,
Wow.
and I'm gonna stop myself from saying brand names. I'm not here to advertise anyone else's product,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
it is one I do believe in. And I started using it to compose basic text and ask questions and just kinda playing around, and the product that it gave me and the output back then versus today is mind-blowing.
Mhm.
And the newest things and abilities, they are so I'm going to say this. There's been a path of technology that I've seen. When I was graduating from law school in 1999, we were trying to determine if lawyers could ethically email clients and whether that was a problem. Not
Sure.
kidding. My first job at a law firm, I had a secretary assigned to me. I was not allowed to use my own computer to write. I had to do dictation, handheld dictation machine, staring up at the ceiling as I spoke. Then the tape went over to my assistant, and she had formerly been in a dental practice. She didn't know law. The time that she spent in reviewing things, sending them back and forth, and I'd have to hand correct it, send it back to her to type it out. What I didn't realize then was it was all very billable, and that was what was going on.
Oh,
Fast forward to a few years later, we're still dealing with issues with technology and issues about the cloud popping up. It's always been something. And oh, I remember what it was around the mid early 2000s, 2004-ish, going to court for status calls. I kept saying, why can't this be done by video conference? If the defendant can be, brought in by video conference, can't we do a lot of this? And now, I mean, look at after COVID, all that
Zoom.
stuff
Yep.
happened. So the lawyer lawyers as a profession are the last to adopt things, and a lot of times there's no incentive for lawyers to adopt new technologies that interrupt their billing. So access to information is something that makes the world a better place. And clients are better clients when they have access to information. Gatekeeping what the law is doesn't make sense. The value of a lawyer is interpreting the law and telling the clients what's going to happen. So, back to using AI, I started going through and, working with it. And over time, I started using some of it, and I would plug things here and there, and I would learn what it was doing right and not doing right. And over time, I've become a very good prompt engineer. I've
Mhm.
taught my AI systems that I use, and they're all different systems. Whatever you, it's not like the internet where it's one ubiquitous
Yeah.
thing. All of these systems are proprietary knowledge bases that are one is not like the other. And the problems that I saw a lot of times were it would give me output with things that were ethical problems, like the word expert. You can't qualify yourself as an expert unless it's a specialization. Here in Texas, we have the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. Attorneys take a special exam for that to become board certified. And before, the bar told you how much you could charge. You could charge more for board certification. Um, so there's a lot. Every state and jurisdiction has its own rules on what you can and can't say, and the AI systems have been slow to learn that. And is in a nutshell, when I tell people about using AI for content, my rule is this: use it, read it, pretend that you're using a law clerk or someone that you've assigned this task to who knows just enough to do the work but not enough to not get themselves in trouble. So you need to have your eyes on everything. And I will next say this: I saw TikTok, another thing that everyone was afraid of until, funny, both political parties started using TikTok for their candidates. So
Yeah.
that's all we'll say about that. But I saw TikToks about I just plugged in ethics for lawyers when I was at the gym and watching a few videos. And the AI programs that I use right now took a bar exam and got a 90% on the bar exam. And the initial one that everyone used to start using got like a 10% or something like that. So you
That's
can
advanced.
fact check your chat GBT and see. Now, I'll also jump in with this. I was hired by a large AI company where I was doing contract work as a law reviewer. My job was to review law synopsis of major Supreme Court cases that were written by law students using AI, and then between the law student version, the AI version, I had to come up with the best version. And I found that different platforms would, in some cases, they would get everything correct. They'd get the case right, they would get the rationale and the holding and the analysis correct, but it would misstate the date that the case was decided and or the state in which the case was originally heard. So, and that was not the system that I used. That was another social media company who has their own system, and it's learning. And the more that we teach, and that there are a lot of people right now at work in these AI groups that are teaching AI what is and what isn't. So as I continue to teach mine through good prompt engineering, it's learning not to do and not to give me output that's undesirable.
Right, right. And that's the key too. I think a lot of people, so I was in another seminar, and the phrase, which may be common, I just hadn't heard of it until that point, is human in the loop. And I'm like, that's exactly like it. You still have to have a human in the loop of using these things to check, as you said,
Yeah.
and to teach it really, and to go forward. Do you how do you how well, I don't want to ask you that because I don't want to give away secrets, right? I want to know what strategies you have used, if you have or have not
I'm
used.
happy to discuss those.
Okay. But I think more for engagement, because so correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times I see law firms being very bland, being very, not, there's not a lot of engagement on their social media, for instance.
Right.
How do you employ any strategies, use AI or not use AI to engage, create a little bit more engagement on that, or
My
advise
ru-
them, I guess would be a better.
I frequently tell law firms if they are a divorce firm, a bankruptcy firm, a criminal defense firm, really, I tell them you might as well turn your comments off and hope for some likes and some shares.
Yeah.
But you know, few people are going. I'm going when social media was younger. people were more interested in talking, and now, I mean, trolls will knock you over the head. And so people are sort of hesitant to engage with anything that isn't very neutral.
Mhm.
I think people are shy about commenting or interacting with something with a law firm because the fear that someone else will think, oh my goodness, they commented, they must be looking this stuff up, they're probably in the middle of something themselves. And people are very shy and scared of doing that. um, that said, the for engagement, I mean, honestly, stop putting out information that is only about your own ego. Start putting out information that's relevant to everyone. So if you want good engagement, and where you should track engagement is your Google algorithms, because everything that's tied back to your social media ties to your website and everything else. And just going looking at your insights on your pages and your social media page for your law firm, your Facebook insights will show when you put out more interesting content that actually relates to people. Maybe that is what gets the job done to get more, because people see it. And if you look at your Facebook stories or your Instagram stories, you can see who has seen your stories. And I don't think many people realize that they show up as like, I mean, I know who my people are who watch me. And people always, you think, because I tell clients that, well, I don't know if anyone's engaging, if anyone's seeing it. Oh, they're seeing it. Trust me. They're just not telling you.
Right.
Um, so it's just, I gave the example of a divorce firm in Florida. What are you going to write about in the middle of these hurricanes? You write about child custody and drop offs and this and what to do if you're having problems because the storms are interrupting your visitation schedule. I mean, right there, that's interesting. It's,
Here's some
put some,
suggestions.
yeah,
Yep.
right. Write
Yep.
about people, not about yourself. And a lot of people have learned to do a lot of DIY, and I see them with they're, we just came out of court today and this happened and that happened. No one cares. I mean, yes, they do, but they don't. It's, oh, good for you. I don't know.
Yeah. It's all about the what can you do for me kind of scenario. So
Well, just always asking yourself the who cares thing and like make it about something that people care about.
yeah, yeah, I agree with you. So how do you so we kind of already talked about that, but are you using AI as far as content then? Are you still doing that human in the loop, or are you
Look, sure.
letting it go? Like how are you
I
balancing that?
will. What I do is, because I know what I want to say. I use a system of things, and I am here to help people, but I'm also here to teach. And if
Yeah.
I would be happier, can't buy the whole world of Coke, but I can tell them how to write better content. And at some point, I always hope those people that I'm not gatekeeping information, they can. I'm hoping that they'll come back and use me for consulting and making sure and having eyes on what's good and doing strategy and higher level things like that. But I put together what my title is going to be, and I'll write my title and I'll put down the list of what my key points are that I want to talk about. And this is where we talk about prompt engineering.
Hmm.
And there's a lot out there. You can, in your prompts in a certain section, tell it what words you do not want to use. And I say, I don't want the word insights. I don't want to use experts. Please don't put the client's name in every single paragraph. Use it sporadically. And if you like the things like that, it's just you learn over time what types of things your AI is doing. And sometimes if your prompts are too much, you're going to get less content or content in a different direction. And you have to be very specific with it and remind it, for the original article we just wrote, I now want these things and I want these things. And I mean, just coming up with the keywords for whatever topic, I used to spend so much more time looking for keywords. And that's something where AI is very useful. It's not reinventing anything. And of course, I'm looking at the, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, we should also throw in this, boom, now. And so something that used to take me 2 hours takes me 35 minutes, 25 minutes as I'm getting better at it. But I have to have my eyes on everything. And the real art, I think, is finding the right picture to convey the emotion and putting your content together in a way that people are just going to look at it and feel. You've got a half a second for someone to look at something, and do they want to keep looking at it? And if they open it up, like, is it, I mean, very short time to have someone either emotively feel good or bad about it? And that's what you want people to have a positive little influence,
Right.
positive touch.
Yep. I 100% agree.
And
And
in the
just as
just in the process, though, you need to like take things through several iterations of editing.
Mhm.
Um, so because I don't necessarily trust between the AI system, Grammarly. Everyone should use Grammarly, pay for the updated version. If
Yes.
you're using Grammarly, you're using AI. If you're using spell check in Microsoft Word, you're already using AI. So, but go through, and I figure by the time, or Google Docs, by the time I have, and I've got my Grammarly plugged in as an add-on to almost everything. So sometimes it'll fight and change things back to whatever, but that's also as you're going through and checking things, that's your opportunity to make sure that you are reading everything that gets put out. And I know some people don't do that because I see a lot of social media posts that still have too many emojis and markdown language. That's like, I don't know if people thought that all of a sudden putting asterisks before and after things became like a cool thing. Like, no, that's markdown language that indicates bolding.
So the other thing, I see we have a friend there with
Yes, this
you.
is one of my interns. This is Pocat. He is a tuxedo man, and the Egyptians worshipped tuxedo cats. So I think he's got to know something,
He's got to he knows
right?
something. So just as a point too of content, and when talking about editing and editing it down, in my original prompt one time, I had put, please only use stats from 2023 and 2024,
Yes.
thinking that it would know to go out, search for those stats and use it. One of my processes that I use is I always ask it to review itself. So after it does it, I'll say, hey, remember when I asked you about the stats? I noticed you didn't give me links. Can you please give me the links to those stats? And
Hmm.
it came back and it said, I apologize for the misunderstanding. We created those stats and said they were from 2023 and 24. So it makes up, I love that it told me, but it makes up things. So then you have to be more specific with what you're asking. And so still may take research to go out there and find different things that you want it to implement in. So perfect example.
Yes.
So again, human in the loop, check your stuff. Don't ever, especially when it comes to stats. Definitely. Um, so we kind of talked about it a little bit, this social media role with your with content. Is it difficult for attorneys and law firms, besides the the ones that you already mentioned? Is it hard for them to use social media? Is that difficult?
I think people have a difficulty in deciding what to do with so many options. I frequently talk about thinking about your demographic and who you're looking for. And if you are, for example, looking for people who are getting divorced, look at the average age of people getting divorced. What platforms is the average age group using? Um, LinkedIn, I thought, was something that was greatly underutilized, and I see more people getting deeper into LinkedIn and finding out, oh, this is actually a really good place to do things. So it's knowing which platforms to use, knowing what content goes on where. I mean, I feel like they're pretty good at like getting the concept of writing blog articles and putting those out on social media, and then we get into stories and posting stories and explain to someone like why something that's not going to be stuck around forever, what makes sense to have a story that has a expiration moment as opposed to something that's going to stay forever on your page. So it's just adapting to the new this and that, and it's just adapting to change because people get used to one way and then they hear something else and then they get frustrated. And I mean, th- there's in the world of advertising, social media, content, branding, all of it, really it's public relations, and you're relating to your public, and you try to need to be where they are and communicate with them how people are communicating. So whether it's through videos, articles, you just have to adapt. Could be holograms in the future, we don't know.
Yeah, it might be close to that. Um, what advice, because I have two more questions for you,
Yes.
but what advice would you have to give someone to kind of help them overcome their concerns and maybe their hesitancy to using these new tools and getting the benefits from that?
Yes, I would. Now, I'm going to talk about law and finance because finance is also a very tough area. And FINRA rules, you think lawyer rules for marketing and advertising are, in different states have different levels of progressiveness when it comes to what can and can't be done. Um, but my recommendation is talk to someone who handles your concerns for ethics and advertising and all your things like that. Someone in your organization should be charged with maintaining, what's going out, and everything's good there. But have a system in place and have policy. If you're going to have your paralegals and staff doing social media for the firm, if you're going to have other lawyers at the firm contributing to the social media, it's important to know what roles are there, who's doing what. Um, and having too many cooks in the kitchen is a problem as well. I see issues when people have multiple firms doing a lot of their content, and not everyone is on the same page. I've run into things where an attorney will find someone at a networking event and they do some marketing or content, and they will say, okay, I'll throw you a little bit of business, and they can write a few articles a month. Well, all of a sudden there's stuff showing up on that website that contains things that are not even the correct law for the state. Family law, for example, there are elements of family law in one state that do not exist in other states, and you can tell when you get content that's like, what is this? And the reason that people should be concerned is you can be disciplined by your regulatory authority, state bar exam, FINRA, whoever it may be, for having incorrect information on you're responsible for everything that goes out. And it's not just like a business where you may look like an idiot, like your livelihood and career may be on the line. So it's important to take this stuff seriously, but
Mhm.
it's also a matter of like, well, everyone else is doing it. Well, are they doing it well? I mean, what are they doing? So it's measured risk. And I remind people that of my story about, remember when we wouldn't use the cloud and we're afraid? Remember when we wouldn't use, Zoom because we were afraid? And everyone's afraid of, breach. I mean, with law, it's, breaching client confidentiality. That's an issue. Having people's data. I mean, are you using ChatGPT and putting in the actual names of your clients and people? I don't know. Are you also putting those in emails? Do you trust Gmail? I mean, what almost every system that we see is subject to hacks and vulnerabilities. And with AI, who do you think is going to use AI to do a better job of what they're doing? Probably the hackers.
Yeah.
So, there's at some point, like, you're either frozen in time and not even doing business, or you're keeping up with the speed of business. And that's the challenge now. I saw a TikTok video where a guy took a contract. It was a real rental agreement, and he put it in the chat GBT because there was some issue with the rent and withholding rent. And it turned out that chat GBT told him that the rental agreement was illegal because it asked for more than 1 month's rent security deposit, which a new law made illegal in their jurisdiction. So they won their case and got a $4,000 reward on top of that, and did all this on their own as a pro se and never hired a lawyer. Um, Remember, my uncle, who was a judge, I sat in his courtroom when a litigant came up with, it was one of the kids with a drinking in the woods ticket or something like that. My judge says, my uncle rather, says, you come back with a lawyer, and if you don't have a lawyer, I'm going to throw you in 30 jail for 30 days. And I'm sitting there thinking, you can't do that, but he did, and the guy showed up with a lawyer. So, I don't know. It's the practice of law. It's not the perfect of law.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's a good point.
yeah,
So my last question is, and I think this is
yeah.
kind of fun. What do you see moving forward for like trends, whether it's in AI or just in marketing? Like, what do you see? Because for me, and maybe it's the same for you, this technology is moving so fast. It just feels like it's lightning speed. I mean, social media was new and it kind of had a pace, but this just feels like it's here. What do you see moving forward?
I see more arguments about regulation. I
Mm.
see issues with judges banning attorneys from submitting documents. I saw all sorts of things, um, with, some judges are more lax. Other judges are real strict about asking people, did you use AI in producing any of the documents submitted in
They
court?
are.
And, to me, it's like, well, yeah, I use spell check. You're using AI. I mean, are you, you know, what AI can be wrong, a law clerk can be wrong, another lawyer with a drinking problem can be wrong, and so there's going to be arguments about the ethical use of these things, and everyone will, talk about what they need to talk about. And I predict that we're going to see more jurisdictions in their model rules of conduct for advertising, clarifying points about the use of AI and reiterating that with attorneys, it's your obligation to make sure that everything that's going out of your office is true and correct and not full of misstatements of law or misrepresenting yourself or your practice or whatnot. If your chat GBT starts talking about the cases, if it starts doing things that are unethical, that's a problem. So people are going to talk about regulating AI, a lot of things with regulation I see, and I think that people will find more folks who are open to really getting into where their value is as a professional, and is it gatekeeping the information like I said, or is it telling people this is what's likely to happen based on what we expect when we go to court on something, or this is what you should expect. I mean, that's the true value of attorney and practicing law, is predicting the outcome of things.
Right. Do you feel, and I haven't even looked at this myself yet, there is, through some platforms, they have, one version for personal use, and then they'll have an enterprise version, which, from what I understand, does have the firewalls and the blocking and the more privacy
Mhm.
of data. Do you recommend that companies look at that versus the personal use, or have you, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think also taking a look at your insurance policy, because our errors and omissions, for example, or malpractice, is only good as whether we violate the terms and conditions of our contracts with those providers who insure us. So taking a look at that. And I think that some of the higher level and paid for subscription with firewalls and added protections are good. I always believe in using the paid version of things. You get a little more extra security. Even when it comes to marketing with Google, like, I'm not a big AdWords pusher, but I tell people I think Google's going to treat you well when you kick some money into the kitty. Might be appropriate there. And do think that we're going to see more people using more professional and paid versions of things. And they should be adopting that in their policies and procedures of whatever. I mean, if Westlaw and Nexus, it's in the same section where we talk about that. And that may extend to, you're not allowed to use the system and your password outside of the office or outside of the safetiness of I mean, let's say you're using a computer that has its own web browser universe. I like Gmail, like I've got different Gmail profiles for different things. So we may see some limitations there, just efforts to control quality. But think about emails. I mean, attorneys can be communicating and emailing each other and clients and things at all hours now, and that's not always the best either. So a lot of the questions and solutions involving technology is going to come back to what we already are doing with communications, and stressing the importance of quality and communicating as well, first and foremost.
Yeah. And it's still going at lightning speed. So from what I'm hearing, just to kind of recap, really, a company should kind of have an idea of how they're going to handle it, both with themselves and if they have staff too, correct? Like how is this going to be used and what's allowed, correct?
Yeah. And what type of, I mean, and also knowing when to use so much AI and when not to. And I really caution people to be aware when they're putting out social media posts that are full of way too many emojis and markdown language where it's like notoriously, obnoxiously, obviously AI composed. And people can tell, and it's getting better at sounding human, and engineering good prompts, with humanized voice and don't sound like a robot. And it gets better, but then it'll throw in sometimes colloquialisms, and it'll start sounding a little bit, like uneducated. And I've noticed that as well. And it's like, interesting. So I always go back to my Grammarly, where I can adjust for tone. And do I want tell a story, convince my audience, or describe? Do I want professional, informal. It's totally different. If I'm writing something for an audience who's going to hire a bankruptcy firm versus financial, something where where you just got to think of your audience and their skill level, and just adjust everything, and just again like keep your eyes on everything. I can't imagine just trusting. I mean, if you wouldn't trust someone in your organization, if you're responsible for it and someone else gives you something and you just run with it and never look at it, like, I can't help you, man. You know?
Well, there's always, I would imagine, especially in a law firm, there's a lot of checks and balances going on, correct?
Yeah, there needs to be. I remember a firm that I worked at in Chicago where there was on the way, it was right across from the Daily Center, and it was in one of these cool old buildings. There was a jeweler's building or whatever. It's very historic. There's a church on the first floor. One of these old ornate buildings they don't build anymore. Today we see all this modern architecture. I just don't like it. But
That is one good thing
we
about Chicago's architecture.
the blend of architecture is amazing there. And anyways, there was a book at the by leaving the door for where the mail would go in a little box, and you had to write down in the book, where the mail is going, who the sender was, and then what it was an additional redundant level of checking to see what was going in and out of the office, and that was actually in the insurance policy for malpractice for the attorney who ran the place,
Wow.
that it said you need to have another backup system for things going out. And if you don't do that, so especially also, I want to say with attorney client engagement agreements, if you're using, if you feel it incumbent upon yourself to share what systems or things you're using, do that. I don't think the clients really ask, are you looking up cases in paper books? Or are you using Westlaw? I mean, are you using AI? I mean, and how are you communication policy with clients? All these things are just important. It's just go through and see what your rules are and all your documents, and just keep updating as the world keeps updating and you're doing your thing, and have a way to operate without. I feel bad for, some of the criticisms of people. I've seen videos on TikTok of kids in college and graduate courses where they're in an auditorium room and they have their laptop flipped open and they're lecture.ai, and it starts listening to the professor and writing everything down and composing it to them, and it can read them stories at night with riddles to memorize the information and whatever, but they're not writing it down on paper and taking, like I talked about with cognitive psychology and note taking. We're shortchanging ourselves if we don't learn, and if we're cutting off one of our learning tools. We're not going to do ourselves much of a service. We'll be like the people who can't tell time without a digital watch, or can't make change without a computer. And, you know, it's important to still have all the technology is good, but technology is a tool. It can be used for good and it can be used for less than good.
Yeah. Every other week, I probably have that movie Idiocracy pop into
Yeah.
my head.
Yeah. Well, it's challenging learning, and that is such a good movie. And to stop giving Gatorade to the plants, even though you think that's what they crave.
Electrolytes.
But the reality of things, and we've seen them. I remember when TikTok had AI. I mean, there was aliens in the mall in Florida, and I don't know what mall it was. Like, did they?
Miami. Yeah.
Yeah, of course it would. Well, I mean, if I was an alien, I'd come back to Miami. I mean,
Why wouldn't you?
it's the best people watching. It's South Beach. There's so much, but there's a lot of people who don't know what's real and what's not. I've seen things with people showing their grandma video games from GTA, and it's like, no, that's not real, and that person just didn't intentionally head on into a police car. That's a video game, grandma, but she doesn't know.
Mm.
And so the world could be a very scary place. And with AI and the ability to sort of do like the deep fakes and the videos, who's talking and what's real. I saw one the other day where the lips didn't quite match, and it's like, no, that person is not saying that. But being able to determine what is real and what is not real in all the world of information and misinformation, it's anyone's best guess. And I'll tell you, as a lawyer, the thing that I go back to is, what do I have personal knowledge, that which I can see, taste, and touch and feel to myself, to the extent I'm an actual human and not a cyber something running. Maybe I'm a robot running a program. I don't know.
Maybe you are AI.
Depends on the day. I mean,
I
with
never
ragweed
asked.
right now, I'm about as useful as one. Just kidding. But
I didn't ask. I should have asked. Are you AI? No.
Are you? Am I? Are you? You know?
No.
Is the cat? I don't know. Speaking to the flower, ma'am, you know?
So I think this is all new territory for all of us, but there are ways to use it, as you mentioned, and it's just again just being cautious. And I love the points you made about talking with insurance, making sure your policies and everything
Yeah.
like that are
Document everything you're
verified. Yeah,
doing. I mean, write down like we have made the decision as a firm to do this or not do this. We accept these or these challenges. If you see this, say this. If you do that, do that. Put it in your engagement agreement. If you do, I mean, cover your bases. Show and I always, they drilled it into our heads in law school. Everything you ever write and send in an email, be able to defend it in a court of law. And I to this day, and it's my brother who works in finance as a broker dealer, and he's registered by FINRA, the same thing. What you say can and will, it's everything is public record now. And we see with social media people going back, and all these people in post Diddy arrest, all these people scrubbing and getting rid of their social media. And it's like that's a problem. And I'll tell you what, in court, and a lot of times, if there's anything that's evidentiary in your social media, and you go and you wipe all that stuff out, that's spoliation of evidence. If a claim has already been filed, and you can get in big trouble for that. And I see, a friend of mine, all of a sudden her Facebook went away and her profile was deactivated. And I know this person well enough. And I looked up in the local court records, and sure enough, there's a divorce pending. The husband filed for divorce. So she has now disappeared off social media. And it's, I don't know. It's, you just go back. Like that's why I like on Facebook going back to the memories and going back and pulling things out of there that, oh wow, I wish I wouldn't have said that. Oh wow, I wish wouldn't have said that either. Because people can go, I can go onto anyone's social Facebook page and type in the search bar and type in birthdays, names of candidates, any hot topic, and I can put together instantly a whole thing about you and go over to TikTok and be like, what a moron. And now, I mean, it doesn't take much.
no, and even well, we're dating. I'm dating us, I guess, because we've met through social media so many years ago. I know Facebook was like 2012, I think, is when I joined. So that's a long time. And
Yeah.
Twitter, now X, you can search for words in everyone's Twitter feed as well. So
Yeah. Well, and I stopped using Twitter for a long time and was only using Facebook. And, I went and deleted a lot of things off Facebook and then went, oh my gosh, that stuff's still on Twitter because I had stuff set to auto
direct
populate the.
cross
Yeah, right.
posts.
So another reason, like, I don't necessarily recommend that either, although everyone thought it was nice. Like, just because it's quicker, it's just because you can produce a volume, it still it still reigns true that quality is preferable over quantity.
Yeah. 100%. And that's the same with AI. You need to, as you said before, it still takes you time to edit and to get the things down to the
Yeah,
exact post that you want. You don't want to just do one post, get an output and go, okay, there's it. There it is. That's it.
yeah.
No,
I'll tell you where I started. When I started doing it was things like for personal injury firms when it was give me a list of 7 tips for Thanksgiving traffic. And that is where I started really using AI and getting those cuz that kind of thing would have taken me. It's like it doesn't you're not going to get it wrong. It's useful, it's interesting. I've got a podcast tomorrow. October is Family and Domestic Violence and Awareness Month, and I have a podcast tomorrow. And last time we talked about what should we do for October, and we decided let's do family violence. She says this is going to be spooky, and I'm going to come up and I'm going to ask my ChatGPT to give me a podcast outline that has some Halloween themed questions and hypotheticals. So we'll have it so Mr. and Ms. Skeleton, get into this and this happens and whatever, so and things like that like are time saving, and it would take me a half afternoon to come up with a bunch of cute little things. But so it's I just say practice with it, play around, see what your output is, just like anything else.
Yep. No, 100% agree. Well, thank you. Nick, how can we get a hold of you? What's the best place to reach you if we have more questions about AI and law firms and content marketing for law firms and
Low
financial?
All of this is I like to help people. That is my mission in the world, to one by one make the world a better place and help people with all these things. My company works as a provider. We do monthly programs for people, as well as websites from scratch, construction, and all that. But so we're kind of half a service provider and half consulting and reviewing. So I go into larger law firms and look at what they're doing, and they're all over the place remotely. They don't have to be here in Dallas, it can be in Chicago or anywhere else. And we go through what they're doing right, what their pain points are, and sort of do a lot of that. So 20 years into it, I'm enjoying a lot of that consulting thing now. The website I can best be reached at is Lone Star Content Marketing, on which you can find on the contact page. My telephone number is there, which is 940-597-7476. And also, I have the Calendly link on the contact page. I invite people to just go right ahead and book time with me on a calendar. I can see what it is. And I'm happy to help people and just answer some questions for free. I don't charge for that, but if it's going to be more intense, I do bill for that time. But I would rather help people if they want to do a lot of these things on their own, because that's what the trend I'm seeing
Mhm.
is. A lot of the things that I used to be able to do because I had to hone those practice and skills, a lot of people are able to use a lot of tools and do it for themselves. I just want to help them make sure they're doing things well and have another set of eyes on it and say, this was good, that was good, try doing this, here's how this works. And I'll go in and show people, do this, do that. And it's a collective effort. So again, the telephone number 940-597-7476, and email Nick at LoneStarContentMarketing.com here in Dallas, and serving people all over the place.
Love it. Love it. So I'm so glad we got to talk. Thank you for
Yes.
your patience. This was well worth it, I hope.
Yes.
It
No
was for me.
hurricanes today. Yeah, no
No
hurricanes, just
hurricanes.
ragweed allergies.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. And
Thank you, ma'am.
we'll see you again in the next episode.
All right.